Okay, so this class is about how to frame the future and what is your part in co-creating the future along with God, right? We learn about the laws of creation. We learn about prayer. We learn about meditation. We learn how our actions are prayers. And so what we want to do is to stop and think about and make a plan for how we're going to use these tools in our daily living in such a way that it makes the world better for everyone. This is part of our service. This is part of our life of service. If we just go along with the fear-based narratives, rhetoric, all of the things that are online and everywhere we look and everybody we talk to, it doesn't take long to figure out that everybody is afraid, that there are a lot of things to be afraid of. But all of those things are in the mind. It's not that there aren't real dangers in the world, but it can go either way depending on how many people buy into a story, whether they're going to push that into reality. So we want to not participate in any kind of a negative story that is simply designed to get a lot of attention, right? That's why fearful stories are promulgated. It's to get clicks, it's to get likes, it's to get you to buy something that will help you avoid the catastrophe. You know, buy gold or silver, or, you know, become a prepper, all of those kinds of things. So we want to actively find our center. We want to find a deep rootedness within ourselves. And from that deep centeredness in ourselves, we can add stability and peacefulness to the world. This is about the best thing we can do. Because if we have it in ourselves, then everything we say, every way we interact with other people will reflect that, and it will spread. You see, but even if we live in a cave alone, if we really find that centeredness in ourselves, then that's going to have a rippling effect in the greater mind. We live in a series of nested mass minds. You know, you have your job, you go to work for a company, you are in a mass mind. And so when you show up at work in the morning, if you show up with a positive attitude and a creative mindset, and by creative, I mean, what's possible here? When you show up to work, you have a set of problems that need to be solved. And so what's possible? What are the possible solutions? And that would be approaching it creatively. But if you approach it like, oh, these are those problems that we are having such a hard time solving, and we may never solve them, and you're stuck in a feedback loop that is just self-generates failure. So, and it goes the same with the mass mind of your family. If you have any kind of an extended family that has a mass mind to it, everybody plays a role in it. And everybody's got the black sheep and the white sheep, right? So what you want to do is to proactively and with consciousness take each one of the members of your family and see them in a positive light. And the easiest way to do that is to form a mental image of the person who's maybe a problem in some way, and ask yourself, what would they look like if they were perfectly whole, if they were perfectly sane, if they were perfectly loving and cooperative and a joy to be around? Because when you ask that within yourself, the mind of God will provide you with a very clear image of what that possibility looks like. And as you do that, that's your prayer for that person that will actually affect them, because they are connected to you within not only the greater mind, but within the mass mind of your family. So you can see how the nesting works. You have your family, your job, your community, the city you live in. It has a very distinct mass mind. and the state you live in the country you live in, you see, in the hemisphere, all these various ways to, wherever you have a coherent structure of thinking and acceptance, there you have a mass mind. And so as you participate in that mind, just get really clear with yourself that you are a vocal point within that mind, that what you say and what you think and your actions, if your actions are in accordance with what you say and what you think, then your actions are very powerful because they're a living prayer. So these are just these are some of the realities of the God within which we live. And as you know, I've said many times, I'm not particularly fond of that word God because it tends to, everybody has a different idea of what it means. And so it's better just to dispense with it altogether and start talking in real terms, which in the Holy Order of Mans, we like to say that when we talk about God, we're talking about a very specific God, the God of this solar system. And that takes some people aback. They think, well, the universe is really huge, the solar system is really small. But in reality, the solar system is very, very big, and it's what we've got. It is our immediate environment. And if you think in terms of astrology, the solar system kind of determines what kind of vehicle you work through in each lifetime, right? It's all solar system centric. So it really is a coherent and cohesive intelligence that we live within. And that coherent, cohesive intelligence has its focal point in the sun at the center of the solar system. But now, in understanding what God is, here's something that can really help. When you look around, we see the physical world as it appears to us. And what we don't see is the energy. We can see the extension cord running across the floor, for instance, say in the garage, but you don't see the electricity moving through it. You can see your partner, you can talk with him or her, and you see their face and you see their lips move and you hear the sound of their voice, but you don't see the energy of their being, which is coming through that vehicle. You don't see their feelings, for instance, except as they register on their face. But if you could really see the energy, and then you encountered a person who is in depression, for instance, you'd be able to see it as an energetic phenomenon. You would be able to see, perhaps, if you trained yourself, you'd be able to see where maybe that energy was being blocked, maybe by a thought, maybe by a belief, maybe by a traumatic event that caused a kink in their energy system. You'd actually be able to see that. So what we see in the world is just a very small portion of what not only exists, but what is actually making everything work. It's the energy in all of the life forms that we experience. That's the real world. That's the world that God sees. God does not see the world that we see, which is the world of appearances. Now, I know this flies in the face of the theological concept that God knows and sees everything. Well, I'm just going to suggest that that's a misunderstanding, that that's not actually the case. What we see here, we see, but what God sees is the energy. So it's as though God can only come down into the creation as far as the life energy permits. That's what God sees. Now, this brings up, what is our relationship to God? God is able to experience this world that we're in through us, but only in as much we're only as good a channel for that as we are also attuned to the life energy that is in and informs everything. So if all we are aware of and can grasp and can embody is just the world of appearances, we're kind of we're offline as far as God's concerned. God can't see through us at all. But if we are attuned with the energy within ourselves, with the light of Christ within ourselves, and remember, the light is life made visible, the power of life made visible. That's why we emphasize in the order the illumination, because once you get conscious of the light in you, then God becomes conscious of you, and through you, then God can become conscious in the world. Therefore, when you pray or you present a problem to God, God can much more easily and effectively work through you if God can see through you. So this is very important in terms of our relationship to God. We reach up, God reaches down. But if we don't reach up, there's no way for God to get to us. And remember now, I'm not talking about God as a, white-haired dude in the sky, an anthropomorphic personality who likes some people and doesn't like others. That is so far afield of what we're talking about. It has no bearing or relevance to what we're talking about. What we're talking about is a living being that we live within. God is not something distant. God is not foreign. The words I'm speaking to you now, I am speaking with the power of God. The words you speak with the power of God. There is no such thing as your will, my will, and God's will. There's only one will, and we all use it because the will is like a current. It's our attention, it's our awareness, willpower. They're the same thing. And there's only one will, and we all participate in it. So I'm hoping that some of these, these different ways of looking at this thing we call God will help you get a better relationship with it and to it, because then life really gets interesting. You see, there's nothing quite as thrilling as making a prayer and having it answered. I mean, that's really, really good. So that's my goal in teaching these classes, is to help you get a grasp of the spiritual tools that you have and give you ways to use them so that you can experience more of God as a living reality in your life. Because that's really where it's at. I mean, why else be here? If you don't have that, life becomes oppressive, pointless, and frankly, absurd. But with it, everything takes on meaning. Your life takes on meaning. Because you have a relationship. When you're in a relationship with God, that's the very core of the meaning of your life. So now, one of the most prevalent misconceptions is that there's God and then there's us, right? God and us, nothing in between. We know that's not true. There are lots of beings. There are lots of levels of reality. There's not just the earth plane and then the divine. There are many, many intermediate stages. So part of the spiritual path and part of learning the tools, the laws of creation, is to open our consciousness so that we can see what we're not seeing. Just as we're talking about the energy, say, that runs through an electric wire. We know it's there, but we can't see it. But if we develop our consciousness, we can see it. And if we develop our consciousness more, then we can see the life energy within a living being. We begin to see how it radiates and the colors, and we also begin to get a sense of how the different parts of a person work together or not. And if we develop that even further, then we know what to do to put those imbalances back into balance so that that person is no longer suffering. So the long game in all of this is to develop your consciousness, to become as conscious as you can of as much of reality as you can. And really, the only way you can begin to do that is to first understand that there's more to reality than what you see, what any of us sees. No matter how well developed your sight is, there's always more than what you can see. So this requires humility, and it requires learning, studying. It requires especially doing spiritual exercises, which is far more important than most people realize, because everybody has consciousness, everybody has awareness, but most people are completely passive in their relationship to those faculties. So the spiritual exercises that we teach turn that around and make you an active agent in the use of consciousness, in the use of your awareness. And you'll find that the tiniest effort on your part in that regard will gain you instantaneous results and surprising results, simply because you've not done it before. Maybe you have not tried to see into the essential nature of an object sitting before you. You may not have tried to find the essential nature of yourself. Who is it that's looking through your eyes? What is looking through your eyes? What is thinking your thoughts? Is it you? If it was you, then you'd find it way easier to control your thoughts than you do now. So I think it was Carl Jung who said, people don't have thoughts, thoughts have people. So this is another aspect of this mind that we live within, that there are existent thoughts that can possess you, that you simply catch like a hitchhiker. You catch a ride on a certain thought, a certain set of thoughts, a philosophy, an ideology, some aspect of the mass mind. And there you are. And you think that you're thinking those thoughts, when in reality, those thoughts are thinking you. So one of the first tools we use, like as in meditation, is concentration. But what that leads to is the ability to quiet your thoughts, to disassociate from your thinking altogether and find something more powerful, more present, more immediate in your experience of yourself. And that is yourself. That is the light of Christ within you, the light of life. Because everyone can sense that they are alive, that we have the energy of life moving through us. So the more we tune in to that, then the more our thinking will slow down and stop. It's like when you come up to a beautiful fireplace, with a nice fire in it, or a fire in a campground, a campfire. if you let it, it will completely stop your thinking. You become engrossed in it. It's something alive, it's something moving, it's something that has a transcendent quality to it. And so these are the kinds of states of consciousness we want to achieve for the specific purpose of bringing our thinking to a halt, because it's that thinking that keeps us locked into a part of the mass mind. And if we're locked into a part of the mass mind, that's all we can experience. And anything more than that is just going to come through in fleeting glimpses, as in a dream or in some shocking event, or that jars us out of our ordinary way of thinking, which is governed by the mass mind that we have signed off on. So the spiritual work, first and foremost, is designed to break us out of the mass mind that we are members of. And the first thing that happens, you pop into a larger mass mind. And if you don't settle for that and you persist, then you pop into yet a larger mass mind until finally you break free of the mind altogether and you're in the presence of simple being. And when that happens, then all thinking stops. You can be in that space, and then from there you can look out at the world and see it in ways that you never saw it before, simply because you have grown in consciousness. So all of these things are part and parcel of this thing we call the spiritual path. And in the Holy Order of Mans, we teach it in a very specific way, beginning like with learning how to control your mind through concentration exercises, then learning how to meditate and learning how to pray, learning how to give blessings, which is a lot of fun. You put your hand on somebody's head, and feel the energy move, and they feel the energy move. And it's like, wow, this is real. The God energy is real. And then if you persist and you get to that point where you let go completely and your body fills with light and you feel all lit up on the inside, as though you're sitting in a dark room and somebody walked in and turned on the light switch. See, that's the experience of the light of Christ. And then everything starts to change because it lights up your brain, it lights up all the other centers in your body, and you're able to participate more in the living energy of the life of God, which it has its origin in the sun. All life and love comes from the sun, but we are in the sun. The sun's not out there in the middle of space, 93 million miles away. We are in the sun because we're in its radiant body, you see. So as the light in you starts to increase, then you realize that the light in you is the same as the light everywhere else. And you see a tree and you can sense the life energy in it, and then you realize that same energy is the energy that lights you up. You see, there's only one light, only one energy, this is what they really mean when they talk about monotheism. It's even what they mean when the Christian fundamentalists say that Jesus Christ is the only Son of God. Because if you drill down into that and you unpack it, you find that the word Jesus means you, the human part of you, and the word Christ means the divine part of you. So Jesus Christ is like a formula. It's the formula that defines who and what you are. You have a human part, you have a divine part. And the spiritual work is to bring that divine part into the human part so that it lights it up from the inside, and that the human part then can step into its full potential. And we don't really know what that full potential involves. We haven't seen it except in rare cases, such as in Jesus of Nazareth, such as in Siddhartha Buddha, in other people throughout history who were fully realized, fully embodied in this world with full Christ consciousness, full Buddha consciousness. Those are just words for the consciousness that is the one consciousness, you see. So in order to be effective in the world and help the world unfold in a more productive and creative way, we have to get rid of a lot of baggage in terms of these words like God and Jesus and Christ and, you know, Muhammad and Buddha. All of these are just designators. They are not idols that you put on a pedestal. These are not things outside of you. Get rid of that idea. All of them are talking about the Christ consciousness in you, the Buddha consciousness in you. Because unless it's in you, it doesn't matter. All of that philosophy and theology makes no difference in your life or in the life of the world. Unless you can realize what those philosophies are talking about, you'd be better off doing something else, because that is totally ineffective. So let's see, why don't I open it up now for questions? Go ahead and unmute yourself. And if you have something you'd like to ask or comments.
Michael, I like your, oops, tipped over here. I'd like your clarification on living in multiple nested mass minds. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Okay. I hadn't heard it put that way, but that really makes sense. When you're going through something, like I've been going through something the last few weeks, and it seems like everything is impacting me. Whether I go to the store or my neighbors or somebody comes to my door or wherever, you know, whatever it is, it's a little group of people, like you said, and how it impacts you, you know. And it got to the point like, well, I don't know if it was the beginning of this week or the end of last week, but I mean, I was just like, I didn't want to leave my house. You know, I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want to leave the house. I just kind of wanted to, because I felt the pulling of all these different things, you know, whether it be something they said or something that happened or just, you know, I just find that amazing, just amazing that I never really thought of that before. I mean, I think of mass mind, I think of, well, just the general, how people look or think about things in general.
Right.
But I didn't break it down into each one. I mean, I just really didn't look at it that way. But now that I look at it that way, I went, no wonder.
Yeah. Well, think of, you know, one of the strongest mass minds I can think of just offhand is the country of France, right? They have a very strong cultural identity and national identity. They're proud of being French. They have a very strong culture.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's, you know, when you hear people who are well-traveled, you know, they've been in many places in the world, they say it's a valuable experience because it changes you, right? And just the exposure to that full immersion into another mass mind really radically causes you to re-examine your own, what you're used to, your own national identity, your own sense of superiority, or you know, it makes a big difference. So that's kind of an extreme example of because that the mass mind of the French is nested in the mass mind of Europe. Right? They're not so much nested in the mass mind of the Middle East or of Africa. Those are a step or two removed. So this sense of being nested, like in this country, if you're in Missouri or Kansas, you know, that's a very different mass mind than New York or California.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so but all of those different mass minds, which have their regional identities, they're all part of the greater mass mind of the country as a whole.
Right.
Yeah. So, and you can scale that all the way down and all the way up, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You're I was always amused by in Star Trek, you know, they had a point at which they would say it was now possible to make first contact because the world had achieved a certain state of universal consent, you might say, where the mind of that world had become so unified that they could then safely and sanely entertain the notion of another civilization, another world altogether.
Mm-hmm.
You see,
Mm-hmm.
whereas if you know, a planet that's completely divided and at war with itself, the last thing they want to do is stop and consider something bigger than their drama, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
I think it explains, you know, when you're going through something and you feel torn, and it's just all these things they pull at you. I mean, it could have a good influence, or you can really get caught up in it and just feel like you're being torn every which way and not really, you know, coming to grip with any of it. But yeah, thank you very much for that.
yes, you're welcome. Me Too is asking, how do we avoid this need for more and more information? How do we stop collecting knowledge and actually applying and experiencing it in real life than just living in our head? That's really a good question.
Mm-hmm.
So the best thing to get out of that trap of just getting more and more information is learning discrimination and mental discrimination. And what that means is really focusing in on what's relevant, because relevance is the guiding principle in our mind. And when we lose that sense of relevance, then everything starts to crowd in and we get too many incoming data streams, right? But we
Mm-hmm.
have to get really clear on what's relevant to us, because whatever that is, that's what gives our lives meaning. And by prioritizing our mental state in that way, then it's far easier to dismiss what's not relevant. But when we lose sight of that, when we lose sight and we start thinking everything is important, then nothing is important. So we really have to and the best way to do this is to find that centeredness within ourselves. It's like this, you know, it's interesting. You know, people talk about non-dual consciousness, and they talk about fourth dimensional consciousness. And in the gospel according to Thomas, Jesus says, the kingdom of heaven is spread upon the earth, but men do not see it. And what you begin to realize when you go within, you know, that's what Jesus said. He said, the kingdom of heaven is within. And he said to seek the kingdom of heaven before all things. The kingdom of heaven is within, and the kingdom of heaven is that non-dual state of consciousness. And the only way to, you know, those, I think they're called autostereographs. It's those posters that are just a mass of couple of colors, you know, like red and blue. And if you allow your eyes to go out of focus, then a three-dimensional object appears right in the middle of the field. You've all seen that, right? Yeah. So reaching the non-dual state of consciousness is a very similar feeling, because you have to go within, and where's within? You know, we think it's behind us, so we turn around to look, you know, but but then what's behind us becomes what's in front of us again. So the only way to really go within is to back into it. Is to find, like, where are you, right? You ask a person, where are you? And it's like they're in their forehead or they're in their eyes. That's where consciousness and awareness seems to scrunch up, right in this part of our anatomy. But all you have to do is shift. The reason you think you're there is because that's where you've put your consciousness. So if you can put it here, put it somewhere else. Put it above you. Put it in the flowers in a vase in your living room. Put your consciousness in some far distant country. You have the ability to place your consciousness anywhere you want. And when you do that, then you realize that you're not just scrunched up here. You're not who you thought you were. You are, in fact, pure awareness. And when you really latch onto that, when that starts to emerge in your consciousness, you shift into a whole different dimension where there's no thinking, there's no space, and there's no time. You shift into a very real space that's eternally now. And it's easy. It's relatively easy. All you have to do is to work at it. That's the whole point of this thing, because once you hear people talking about the truth, with a capital T, the truth, and they never say what that truth is, because the truth is not a set of information, not a set of facts. It's not a new belief. It's not a new philosophy. The truth is this interdimensional space that we can back up into, and it emerges and it completely overwhelms and displaces this world of appearances that we are so caught up in. It happens just like that image, that three-dimensional image pops out of the field of that mass of color. It happens. You can't even really make it happen, but you can sure set it up so that it can happen. And once it does, then that's not the end of it, right? Because you enter into a whole new space, a whole new reality, and then you start to look around in there. You see, what does this new state of consciousness afford you? What does it enable you to do from there? See, that's just the beginning. It's just the beginning of the rebirth process. It's coming out of the tomb of matter. Because this world of appearances is literally a tomb of matter, because we're so caught in the appearance of things. So this is the work that I'm doing. Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is at hand, and that was deemed the good news, right? That's what the word gospel means, good news. And what he was saying, in essence, is that this doesn't take a long time. You don't have to struggle for spiritual enlightenment for lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. You don't have to, spend hours on your knees every day or hours and hours in meditation. No, it's like right here. And all it takes is just looking in that direction. You see? I mean, it's immediate. And it doesn't matter how smart you are, how rich you are, how thin you are, or how whatever. It makes no difference. None of that matters. Especially the intelligence part. It just does not matter. All it takes is truly going within. And where do you come from when you speak the words you speak? Where do those words come from? They come from within. So you can follow that path back inside you and start to get a sense of where within is. You know, it has its kind of relationship to parts of the body, but when you really tap into that current and you swim upstream in that current, you go deeper within yourself and farther within yourself. And pretty soon the world starts opening up. That inner world starts to open up and you become aware of it. And as you become aware of it, it becomes aware of you. And then a real dynamic and loving relationship can be formed. So this is the work that I do. I'm teaching radical meditation, which is a way to do this. It's a way to go within. And it's easy. It's not difficult. It takes time. It takes a little bit of time. It takes practice. But once you get the hang of it, it happens faster and faster and deeper and deeper. So how's this striking you? Is it resonating? You find something that you can identify with, something to latch onto? Teresa, how about you?
Hi. Yeah. No, I'm still kicking around the statement from last week's class
Yeah.
where you said like God wasn't all knowing, like not omniscient. And I'm like, I really had a tough time with that one.
Oh yeah.
And I kind of, wrestled it down to the ground and it won. Because I tried to come up with any solution to that problem. Um, Basically, I was thinking, like, how would God not be able to deliver my prayers if God didn't already know, like, where everything is or what everything should be or where everything is? But then it was like, no, because it seems to be like a deduction of things. Like God can say, well, yeah, you want this house. Okay, well, here's a house. How's this one? And then you can go, no, I don't really want that one. Oh, okay. How about this one? Okay, how about this one? So it's really about my choices again,
Right.
and not God really knowing everything. So I'm still kind of on that one from last week. But for this week, I think what I'm stuck on a little bit, and you can elaborate. Um, I'm thinking if there's 8 billion people on the planet, I think we're up to 8 billion now, I'm not sure. And 7 billion 999 million all believe one thing, but I want to choose to believe something different than the rest of them. Does that make it impossible for me or not impossible for me? Is it just about where I am in the will of things?
Confucius really had an interesting way of addressing that. He said that you can't sweep darkness out of a room, but you can light a match. You can light a candle. Now, comparatively speaking, the darkness inside of a room has a lot more volume than the bright flame of a candle, right? You know, by an order of magnitude. The candle flame is a lot smaller, and yet it lights up the whole room. So what that means, that's these people like Confucius, they always spoke in parables and in layers of meaning. What that means is that one truthful thought or a thought that's in alignment with reality will dispel vast quantities of error. So all it takes is one person to see clearly, and the entire mass mind will be changed by that. You see, just the same way that one single candle flame will remove all the darkness in a room. So that's the power of thought that's aligned with truth. So yes, you have an enormous effect on the world, but you have to really get out of the mass mind to do that. And the best way to do that is to go within and find the kingdom of heaven within, and then think from there. Now, about your problem with the God doesn't know everything. There's, there are parts of your body, vast parts of your body that you are not aware of, things that go on automatically, that you don't see or know how your stomach does what it does, but it does it, and it does it, really, really well. And similarly, there are parts of your mind that you are unaware of. You're unaware of how you process certain information, but it's getting processed. And then it assembles itself, and then it comes out as a clear thought. But those parts of us that are automatic, they're very precise. Not one sparrow falls that God does not know of it, that the Father does not know of it. So what that's saying is all things are connected, right? So it knows the current state of all things. I got involved with trading online way back in the 90s, bought my own satellite dish, and started studying market technicals, a way of interpreting market moves by technicals, which is analyzing charts. And I thought, well, this will be a piece of cake because, I'm self-realized and I'm in contact with the mind of God. And so I should be able to be a millionaire, here in very short order. And finally, what I wound up doing is I took a Post-it note and I wrote on it, "Not even God knows." And I put it on my computer. This is why you can't pray to win the lottery before the lottery.
I had that thought last night. I was like, my mother's in heaven and my father's in heaven. Why can't they send me the winning lottery?
because they
Why
don't
can't they
exist
ask?
yet. They don't exist yet. I jokingly, I was analyzing the tarot card, the Fool, and seeing a connection to what we're talking about in the Fool card. And I came up with this thing that said, God knows everything except one. And that is what I'm going to do next. And in that, he's intensely interested.
He can know all the possibilities and potential of what you could do. Just not which choice you'll
Well,
actually make.
even there, I mean, you can see the potential in any given thing, but you cannot see the entirety of those potentials. So it's like, it's like a chessboard. You've got 64 squares and I forget the number of pieces, but the number of possible moves on that chessboard approach infinity. So there has to be an element of unknowability within the creative mind in order for creativity to exist. Because if you take out the unknown factor, if you take out the wild card, which is what the Fool is, the Joker, right, in a regular deck of cards, it's Neo in the Matrix, the wild card. If you take out the wild card, you put an abrupt end to all creativity and therefore all forward progression. So God doesn't know everything because it's necessary for God not to know everything so that something new can be born, something entirely new. You see, this is like the cutting edge of creation. It's where creation actually starts happening. But in order for that to happen, there has to be that unknowability factor. And that's the way God set it up. So, we want to know, we want to believe that there's an answer for everything. And that's a very difficult place to be in because everything is changing constantly. So there is no one answer. Answers shift as fast as circumstances shift. It's very unsettling, I know, because we want some kind of security, but there is none. There is no security in this. And this is why, you know, the spiritual path isn't for everyone, because a lot of people just want something to believe. They don't want to jump in the river. You see, the river, you know, that saying, you can't step into the same river twice, because the river's always flowing. You know, it's a Zen parable. Not many people want to do that. That would terrify them. You see. So we loosen up. You know, part of the spiritual path is loosening up. It's letting go of ideas primarily. One of those ideas is God knows everything. You know, well, let go of that, because it's not really true. And you know, the other one is God is all powerful. Well, what does that mean? You know, what does that mean? Because and you know something's wrong with that one, because then, well, if God is all powerful, and this is how the argument always goes, it's like, if he's all powerful, then why does he allow bad things to happen? You know, instantly you're in this unsolvable seeming paradox. But it's not even a paradox, it's just a contradiction based on a false premise.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to kind of kick it out of gear, you know, kick your mind out of gear and let it freewheel and start to look at reality through a different lens and break free of these enormously powerful mass mind concepts, you know, such as God is all powerful, God is all knowing, you know, or even God is love. You see, that's not a very useful one either, because what does it mean? Really? I mean, you know, the word love has a different meaning for just almost everyone. And if you don't know what love means, how can you say something like God is love? You see, it would be far better to really go within and really self-examine and become self-aware in that domain called love. What is that? You know, really get in touch with that. And the closer you get to the reality of the reality of love, then the closer you would get to God. But if you short circuit it and just use it as some kind of linguistic label, you know, God is love, that will keep you from realizing God. You see, the truth lives in the question, not in the answer. So it's far better to really become a question than it is to collect a bunch of answers that you can then trot out and believe in, you see. And this is not easy, you know, this is not easy work. It takes an adult, you know, you have to be mature and willing to let go of things. You can't be possessive, you can't be a believer, right? You kind of have to become a real skeptic and not accept anything unless you can actually see it directly and experience it directly. And then have the humility to admit to yourself that even that is way smaller than what's actually there.
Mm-hmm.
So we're about at the end of the hour. Are there any other questions, comments, complaints?
I'm just waiting for the sky to rip open now. That's all.
Good. Go within, look up, and let it open.
That's it. Let it go. What am I?
What am I? I know you are. What am I? So just briefly, just sit straight up and become aware of a perfectly vertical line that runs straight up from your sacrum, right straight up through your skull and up into the cosmos. It's coming from the center of the earth, right through the center of you, all the way out to a far distant star. Somewhere out there, there's a star that perfectly aligns with you, the center of the earth in itself. And see the vertical line is lit up as though it were like a neon bulb, just glowing, running right straight up your back. Now just very gently lean into it. Lean into that column of light. Let it impinge itself upon you. Just merge with it. Just lean back into it until it becomes the core of you. And look up, not with your eyes, but just with your consciousness. Reach as high as you can, away from the earth, way up into the cosmos, into that vibrant field of life. And feel that travel down this vertical line right into your body, right into your head, and see it light up your insides. And stay with that. Don't try to make it do anything or mean anything. Just let it be. As all the power that ever was or ever will be is in that right now. The power to move planets, to light up suns. It runs right through the core of you. Lights you up from the inside. And breathe it in. And then breathe it out into the space around you. Breathe in that light, and then breathe it out into the space around you. And then gradually and easily become aware of that space in the room that you're sitting in. Become aware of your physical body. And know that this thing you've just seen exists all the time. You carry it around with you everywhere you go. And when you're ready, just open your eyes. That's a place you can go to in meditation every time. You never have to worry about or wonder if you're meditating right. Just go there. And even when you're not meditating, that's there. It's always there. Okay, well, we'll see you next week, next Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
We'll take this we'll kick this can a little farther down the road.
Okay. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
It's a real pleasure.
Night, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Night.